I'm Jake and I've been flying drones for over 15 years, both commercially and for fun. And in this video, I'll show you how to get the best possible footage out of the DJI Avata 2. Let's get into it. These guys be like, what is this clown doing? Before we even start flying, there's two things I would highly recommend getting. First of them are these little bumpers, which you can get off Amazon, dirt cheap. I'm gonna link the ones I've got down below, but you can literally get any because I'm pretty sure this is the same print and it's just sold at different price brackets. The other essential thing is getting DJI Care, purely because you'll be crushing this drone multiple times, just like I did. Thankfully, in my case, I got away with a little bit of super glue. However, I had a few moments when I felt like this is it. You know, I'm never gonna get this drone back. For the image quality, it makes zero difference if you're flying with the RC3 or the motion controller. One of the first things you need to figure out is what stabilization you want to use in the drone. You've got a really choice of two. So no stabilization kind of sucks unless you want to use gyroflow later to stabilize it in post. I don't normally bother because the built-in stabilization on DJI drones is pretty legendary, and I can't really see a scenario when I have to use gyroflow. I appreciate some people do, so if you want to go that route, just use no stabilization whatsoever and then decide the stabilization you want in a post. For majority though, there are only two real options. There's a horizon lock, which basically imitates the same kind of image you would get out of camera drone, so nicely stabilized for cinematic, I hate this word, man, but yeah, cinematic views. So if you're on a trip with a family, you want to record where you guys are and you want this nicely stabilized footage of your surroundings, use that one. If you want the FPV feeling, you need to move on to rock steady. Now, this stabilization improved so massively over the last decade, it's absolutely mind-blowing how good it gets in pretty much any light conditions. Even in the dark, it doesn't fall apart anymore as it used to. Obviously, having a good location helps, and I always advise to fly these things away from people, especially when you're learning, which I guess you are because you're watching this particular video. Now, even in overcast conditions like these, there are a few things you need to know before you get this guy in the air. One of the things you need to know is how to set your white balance, because it really matters whether it's overcast or sunny. And now again, DJI's outer white balance is doing a great job. However, if you're flying in changing weather conditions, you've got a little bit of sun, a bit of a cloud cover, you really want to keep that white balance consistent. So typically, here are the values that you would more or less as a ballpark should be aiming for, depending on what's the majority of the sunlight you're getting on the day. Another setting I suggest to adjust is this one here. Changing from the normal color to D-Log M gives you so much more flexibility in post. Normal color basically records the things as they are. It bakes in the exposure, the color balance, and there's very few things you can do in the post. You can think of D-Log M as a raw photo. That means you've got way more scope for adjusting little things like the white balance, like the colors and the exposure. You'd be surprised how many things you can change and how different the footage is going to look between this that came straight out of the drone and when you apply a couple of LUTs. LUTs are lookup tables, so basically like presets in your Lightroom. There are 100 different LUTs out there. You can do the color correction on your own, or you can apply one of those lookup tables. I'll link up the official one below from DJI, but I'll also link up the Artlist ones because you can get 2 months for free with the link below. What it gives you is access not only to loads of different sounds, to music design, to templates, but also to tons of different LUTs for different occasions. Now, the grande finale. The manual camera mode. You'll notice that if you switch to manual mode, the image might get a little bit blown out. That's because in auto mode, DJI's algorithm automatically adjusts shutter speed to allow less light coming in. That sadly makes the footage look way more digital, limiting the motion blur. As a general rule, for the best motion blur, you want to have the shutter speed at double the frame rate. So, if we're shooting here at 50 frames per second, the shutter speed should be 1/100. To stop the light coming in, we use ND filters, which are basically sunglasses for your lens. I've been using ND filters on all my cameras and drones for years, as they guarantee the best possible image in most conditions. If you look at this freeze frame here, you can clearly see the difference in motion blur between the D-Log M with the ND filter and manual camera settings and the automatic settings. What you can also notice here is that you've got so much more vibrant colors using the basic DJI Rec LUT. I've made 0 changes to the footage itself. The filters I'm using personally are from Freewell. I've been using Freewell filters on majority of my drones and some of my DSLR cameras. They've always been faultless. There's obviously loads of alternatives there, but I know that my image typically is very consistent with these guys, so I'm a sucker for one brand. I like simple solutions. I'll link these guys below, but obviously have a research and see what fits you best. Putting these on the drone is that easy. It takes a couple of snaps, but I would highly recommend carrying a little fiber cloth with you because you will leave loads of fingerprints. Thing to remember is that when you're putting these onto the drone, make sure it's switched off so you're not fighting against little motors that are trying to stabilize the whole little setup, because you'll break them off. We've talked about the D-Log, we've talked about the LUTs. Now how do you combine these together? And it's much easier than you would think. All you really need is a free piece of software like the DaVinci Resolve. I've been working in Final Cut Pro for the last decade and a half, so this is kind of my environment, but this one's paid for. You can get a free software just to apply LUTs, and the process is typically the same, so let's jump into that and I'll show you what to do. So this is how the clip looks like with no LUTs added. This is the D-Log M coming out of the DJI Avata 2. Now, this is not a full D-Log. It's not the same as you would get on a full-frame camera, but it flattens out the image enough so we can play around with some color grading. The simplest way, as I've mentioned before, is applying LUTs. So, the first thing I need to do, in Final Cut Pro at least, is to apply a custom LUT. So we just drop it onto the clip here, and then out of the drop-down menu, I've got a folder for DJI and DJI Avata to D-Log M to Rec 709. This is something you can download for free from DJI's website, and I'll link it down below. So all you do is literally click it, and look, we've got this instead of this super flat image. Now, if you want to be fancy and you want to add another LUT, we can do that as well. And we can, say, drop one from the art list. So if we'll say go with the Caribbean, this is going to be like, you know, overload. Now, you can adjust intensity of these LUTs. So let's just say I don't want this to be so oversaturated. So let's leave it somewhere here so it's not too crazy. You can also adjust things like shadows and highlights, and you can find loads of color grading tutorials. What you really want to do is to make sure that these adjustments are being made before you apply any LUTs, because as soon as you convert the D-Log M to Rec 709, you're losing all that data that you got in the log footage. So if you want to make any micro adjustments here, like say we want to increase the highlights, we want to drop the midtones a little bit, maybe drop the shadows a little bit, and if it feels overly saturated or you don't like saturation shadows, you can play with these sliders here. Now, if you don't have Final Cut Pro, you can download DaVinci Resolve for free, as I mentioned before, and there's plethora of excellent guides on YouTube on how to color grade the footage and how to apply LUTs, and you just need the very basics here. You don't really need to go all out and go through all color grading process yourself, and to be fair, for 99% of the time, the stuff you see online is being just bunch of LUTs stuck together. You just need to make sure they don't look ridiculous, but it's not a hard process. And as always, if you have any questions, drop them below and I'll be happy to answer. Have a good one.